Are you struggling with persistent hair loss and wondering if there is a natural way to reverse it? Have you tried countless treatments or remedies without success and you want to understand the root causes of your hair loss? Do you want to learn how to manage your blood sugar to improve your hair health and overall wellness? My name is Gamden, a holistic wellness coach and the host of the Thriving with Diabetes podcast. I help people with type 2 diabetes achieve diabetes remission and avoid complications so they can live healthier, happier, and longer lives. In this episode of the Thriving with Diabetes podcast, we are joined by Saril Vasquez, the founder of Belconnects. Together, we explore the role of diet in hair growth, the impact of sugar on hair fallout, and how poor diet contributes to hair loss. I hope you find this discussion helpful for diabetes, overall health, and longevity. Enjoy this episode and make sure to subscribe and follow us for more expert tips and strategies to thrive with diabetes. Soriel, if I pronounced your name correctly, welcome to the Thriving with Diabetes podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today, Gamdan.
Brilliant. I believe that your father has struggled with type 2 diabetes for some time. Could you share this or his story to inspire others before we move to talk about other important points?
I would love to. It all started at my wedding in February earlier this year. It's 2024 now. And he's been having issues with diabetes for years, high blood pressure, which has led to chronic kidney disease. And so there were about 15 of us that got sick. But unfortunately, he was the only one that got so sick he developed pneumonia and ended up in the hospital. And so while he was there, they pretty much said there's really not much that we can do except wait until he needs dialysis as far as his kidneys were concerned. And so I took that opportunity because for a long time I had been telling my dad that we needed to do some kind of intervention on his health because he was on a downward decline. And if we didn't change diets and use herbs and, lifestyle changes, that we were going to have an issue in the long haul. And so I made him sign his name on my phone. Okay. Like I typed something up that said, I promise to take the herbs that Saril's given me for 1 year. And if I do, Saril will take me on a cruise and I'm doing this to save my life. So he signed it. I called my siblings and I said, listen, let's get together and split the funds because it was quite expensive, the protocol that we had put together for him with some Chinese herbalists. And so we started the process, and within 3 weeks of him leaving the hospital, his EGFR, which is an indicator of the percentage at which your kidneys are filtering, it increased from 18 to 28. So that was a giant 10 points in just 3 weeks of time. So we said, wow, these herbs are really working. And so throughout our time together, he actually had lost the capability to drive. His doctor said, oh, you can't see anymore. I'm not going to renew your license, which was devastating to my dad because, he's 84 years old. He likes his freedom, and it was such a big deal to him. But he was due for cataract surgery. And so we had done so much work with his diabetes that he was no longer clinically diabetic. His fasting glucose before we started working to help him with his chronic kidney disease, which requires us stabilizing his blood sugar and stabilizing his blood pressure, which we're having a little bit of an issue with the blood pressure. With his blood sugar, we did a great job. He's no longer diabetic. His fasting blood glucose is within 85 to 100, which is normal on most days, but he started off above 120, which is what is diabetic, and then slowly he was somewhere between 101 and 119, which is pre-diabetic, and now that has been normalized. So when he went to do his cataract surgery and he did the vision test again, the doctor said, "Oh my gosh, you passed the test." And so my dad is able to extend his time being able to legally drive. So we were super happy about that. And there are other things that we have introduced into his protocol now to do a better job managing his blood pressure along with the diabetes, such as hyperbaric oxygen therapy, such as a sauna blanket, but that's more on the hypertension side that we're trying to get some results. As far as the diabetes is concerned, we made a huge impact by just changing his diet and putting him on an herbal protocol.
Brilliant. Very interesting story. So he was suffering from type 2 diabetes, high blood sugar or high blood pressure, and kidney issues, plus vision impaired. So through diet, specifically with some herbs, you managed to help him overcome the diabetes implications or complications like vision impaired or kidney issues. That is just a simple strategy that you followed. Very interesting, and I hope this can inspire others. Let's move forward and talk about diet for blood sugar balance and hair growth. This is where your expertise is. So diet plays a crucial role in maintaining balanced blood sugar levels and supporting hair health. If you can talk a little bit more about diet and hair growth plus balancing blood sugar levels.
Sure, I would love to. So I am the founder of a group coaching experience. Also, there's one-on-one coaching involved, but it's called Belcanics. And the reason it's titled that is because I'm trying to empower women to become mechanics of their own bodies to reveal their inner bell. So instead of a mechanic, we are a Belcanic. And so I tell my little Belcanics that are in my community that what we eat has a direct impact on how we look and how we feel and the symptoms that we are feeling on a day-to-day basis. And so it pays to become highly in tune with what an inflammatory diet can be for you. Because if you're eating inflammatory foods, it is going to have an impact on your immune system, on your hormones, on your body's ability to heal itself, on your blood sugar balance. All of these things will come into play. And so there are 5 foods that I caution my clients to limit using at least for 21 days, and then we reintroduce them to make sure that this is actually an issue. But for most people, it truly is, especially here in the States where I am. And so sugar is the first. And when I say sugar, I don't just mean white sugar on a tablespoon. I mean having more than 25 grams of sugar from any source in a day. Could be from fruits. Actually, my worst pictures of how I looked when I was at the height of my hair loss were from eating a high fruit raw diet. And if I can, I'll just show you a picture of what that looks like right now. But this is what I used to look like in 2020.
Uh-huh.
I mean, nobody really wants to date when they have bald spots all over the place that you feel like you have to hide, you see? Yeah. And my blood sugar had such an impact on that. It was creating more scar tissue and creating that baldness in those certain areas because of all the sugar, even though it was from fruits. And so I tell my clients they want to limit the sweetness in their mouth to sweet potatoes and monk fruit for at least 21 days. And then after that, we can slowly start introducing other fruits like berries, green apples, and things of that nature, still keeping in mind that we want to stay below 20 to 25 grams of sugar in a day. Another one is gluten. Gluten is one of the most toxic foods that are out there in the world right now. And a lot of people are in denial, I feel, about how toxic it can be, because oftentimes you'll find gluten in combination with other things that are also not healthy. And so people just want to say it's anything else sometimes but gluten, because there's so many foods that we love. You know, when it comes to gluten, there's pasta, there's bread, and all of these things. But they make lentil pasta now. They make chickpea pasta. They make bread out of nuts and seeds. And so we don't have to feel that attached, because we can still have those foods that we're used to, just with safer ingredients. So gluten is a food that can make someone with leaky gut be more symptomatic. It's a food that can cause a lot of digestive issues. And so I always tell my clients to eliminate gluten, as well as corn and rice, which are two other foods, because guess what? Corn and rice actually have gluten in them as well. They just have a different type of gluten. And so they get away with saying that they're gluten-free. And a lot of people will say, oh, I'm gluten-free, but they'll eat rice and corn all day long, and they will not get the results that they're looking for. For instance, it also has a horrible impact on your blood sugar. My father wears a continuous glucose monitor, and every time that his blood sugar goes up really high, it'll go up 200 plus. And he'll say, I don't know why my blood sugar is so high. I didn't eat anything that was high in blood sugar. And I said, Dad, we have this conversation every time you eat rice. Oh, yeah, I did eat rice. Like, he is in complete denial about the fact that it has a horrible effect on his blood sugar. And it has arsenic in it. And like I said, it also has gluten. And so it can have an effect in our body's ability to heal, because it creates an inflammatory response in most cases, especially with someone who's already very symptomatic and they're trying to get on the other side of healthy. Corn is a food that has been hybridized. It's been made sweeter than it normally was when it was first introduced on this planet in the first place. They make corn syrup out of it in America. And corn syrup, it helps move the economy. It is in a lot of foods. It's also very toxic. And so we realize in our practice, when we remove corn from people's diets, they do much better when they're trying to heal and be in a place where they are in a parasympathetic state, which means the body's in a nervous system state where it can heal, versus a sympathetic state where it's not releasing healing hormones, but stress hormones more often. And then the last food I would say is dairy. And dairy is one that we do see that people are able to reintroduce sooner than later. There are fresh cheeses like, let's say, feta cheese we can get it from sheep milk. It doesn't mold, as often as some of these other cheeses get moldy, right? They're literally made to mold. And so we want to stay away from that. But even for at least 21 days, we want to stay away from all dairy, because it can also exacerbate leaky gut. And a lot of people are walking around with this condition where their colon is more permeable than it should be, which is causing a low-grade inflammatory state for them. And then they wonder why they can't heal. They wonder why they have so many food allergies. And it's, because they're in a condition that doesn't allow them to get as much nutrients from the food as they should. And instead, those nutrients are becoming a signal to their immune system that their immune system needs to fight something off. And so it's no wonder there's so many people that are chronically ill. And so those are the foods that I tell my clients to stay away from. And then gradually, as we do more healing, as we work on increasing the stomach acid, as we work on sealing the gut lining, as we work at removing low-grade infections in the gut, making sure the bowel movements are regular, and whatever else is necessary to help that person heal their gut, then it becomes easier to indulge in these foods from time to time and not have it be so detrimental to your health. And that is always the goal. It's not this idea that you have to be perfect with your diet forever to be healthy and there's so many things you can't eat, but it's how long do we abstain from these things to give our body a break and give it the opportunity to heal. You see, I always refer to the story. I have one friend that is such a go-getter, you know, like says he's gonna do something, does it. And so he was having some health issues and decided he was gonna go paleo for 6 years. 6 years, he did not eat anything that he could not eat raw. So not even potatoes. Like, he was just very, very strict with that. And then finally he said, you know what? I am tired of eating this way. I want to start eating donuts. So he starts having the donuts from time to time and he's fine. Nothing. No symptoms. Why? Because he abstained long enough. He created that space for healing. Now he's able to respond as he did when he was in high school because he hadn't accrued as much damage and he gave his body the time to undo the damage that he had done when he was at that place where he was very symptomatic. So hopefully that makes sense for your audience.
Before you continue watching or listening to this episode, I want to take a moment to invite you to book a call with me. If you are looking for personalized support to manage diabetes effectively and take control of your health, visit onenessimpact.org to schedule your call today. Back to the episode. Brilliant. Very interesting information. Thank you for sharing that. So just to recap, the food that you're recommending for people to avoid, sugar, regardless of the source of sugar, and what you are saying is 25 grams are the maximum that we can consume a day, to stay away from gluten, syrup or corn syrup. This the third one. The fourth one, dairy products. I missed number 5.
It's sugar, gluten, dairy, corn, and rice.
Rice. Okay, brilliant. And you have got a frame work or a timeline that is 21 days. Is like a detox. Is that correct?
It's more like an elimination diet. I do have my clients go through this whole process where we try to remove as many inflammatory foods as possible for that period of time so that they can start feeling normal again. Because sometimes people are so symptomatic, they start to think that's normal. They start to think it's normal to have mucus in their stools or pain on their scalp or bloat, and it's just normal to them. And so we get them to this place where they're like, oh my gosh, this went away and that went away. And so they fall in love with feeling better. So then at that point, we slowly reintroduce things and they're like, oh, gluten makes me feel horrible. I don't want to have that. But now they can associate pain to eating that. And so it's easier for them to abstain from it more often. So that's one of the reasons. But it's also to create more of a place where their body is less inflamed. So it has that space to heal.
Brilliant. Very interesting. So the 21 days is enough for someone to experience the benefit of a specific approach or diet.
Right.
Correct.
Exactly. Yes. Brilliant. So that we can subconsciously rewire their brain to fall in love with feeling good instead of falling in love with eating the bad food.
Okay. So there is another question about the AGE the advanced glycation end products. Is there anything you want to mention about that?
Yeah, so when we eat way too much sugar and our blood sugar stays elevated, our body creates something called advanced glycation end products. And so the way that I think about it, I heard Dr. Peter Kahn speak about it this way, is when you take an onion and you fry it and you keep it on the frying pan for an extended period of time and it begins to brown, that caramelization, that browning is really like you're just frying it. And so that actually happens to our cells. When we have elevated blood sugar for an extended period of time, we create damage to our healthy cells. We begin to kind of burn them with the sugar that we have in our blood sugar. And that process creates oxidation and it creates free radical damage. So it physically ages us. So I don't think it's ironic that the acronym is AGE and it literally spells age. So that's one way to think about it. Having elevated blood sugar ages us. And you can see that, especially with people that are prone to hair loss and thinning. That's why blood sugar is one of the main things that we have to address, because we can see time and time again when people have elevated blood sugar, number one, it messes up their hormones, because insulin is a hormone as well. Cortisol is a hormone, and that tends to elevate blood sugar. But there's a certain cascade of events that come into play that create an environment that makes it hospitable for certain pathogenic organisms to take over and do damage to our immune system and do damage to our body, so much to the point that it can actually cause calcifications or scar tissue in our scalp, causing that pattern of thinning. That's why my hair looked the way that it did when I was eating a high sugar diet, even if it was from fruit.
Very interesting. That shows how having high blood sugar levels can be very dangerous. So it can damage our body's cells, accelerate aging as well. So when we talk about blood sugar, it looks like it can mess us about with everything in our body. So it's not something, when we hear the word blood sugar levels, sometimes it sounds like it's not a serious issue, but it is. When we talk about diabetes, the first thing comes to our mind, it's having high blood sugar levels. Then you look at the complications that come from diabetes, like impaired vision, neuropathy issues,
Right.
kidney issues, and the list goes on and on.
And the reason that happens is because when you have elevated blood sugar for an extended period of time, a couple of things happen, more than I could mention probably in this talk, because we'll be here for hours. But one that's important to what we're speaking to right now is your blood becomes viscous. So this idea of blood viscosity means that your blood becomes thicker than it should be. And so that really affects circulation. It really affects how quickly your blood can move as the heart is pumping it from one place to the other. And so we end up finding people that have diabetes become amputees, and they have extremities like their toes or whatnot that become gangrenous and infected. And why? Because the blood wasn't running through there. Why wasn't the blood running through there? Because the circulation is horrible. Why was the circulation horrible? Because the blood is very viscous. And so where there is no blood, there is no life. And so when there's no life, bacteria has to take over to decompose what's there. And that's the cycle of life. You know, we were meant to disintegrate and go back to dust, and bacteria is part of the process that makes us that dust again. And so when it comes to blood sugar being elevated for an extended period of time, the whole reason that happens is because our cells are meant to introduce sugar into the cell so that it can create energy from that, and we can go about and use that energy to live our best lives. However, there's something called insulin resistance, which I'm sure your audience is aware of. And so when your cells are so accustomed to hearing the sound of insulin at the door, they eventually say, I'm good, I don't need this anymore. And that is why continuously eating so much sugar leads to diabetes, because of the fact that your cells just won't take the sugar or the insulin in anymore. And so this doesn't just show up in your diet, it also shows up in your stress hormones, because cortisol is a hormone that will tell your body to release glucagon, which is sugar, from your liver into your bloodstream. Now you may ask, why is the body telling your liver to do that? And so when you have a stress response, whether it be from something physical in your body or something you are thinking, your body wants elevated blood sugar because it wants to pump sugar into your muscles so you can get ready to run for your life. For instance, I am, a young lady. I'm 38 years old. And if I was alone by myself in a parking lot and it was dark and there was a creepy man next to a white van and the doors were open and he starts walking towards me, I am immediately going to release a lot of stress hormones and I am going to be on high alert. And so I want that to happen because I want to use that excess sugar to run as fast as I can. And so it is a gift to have that. But the problem is we live in a world where someone sneezes and we think we can die. And so when we are in such high stress alert all the time from things that are not necessarily life-threatening, we overuse that mechanism to the point where we begin to create more damage to our bodies from not being mindful about our thoughts, because ultimately it is up to us to decide how we're interpreting things, what level of fear we're going to attach to them, and that all has a very direct impact on the state of our overall health.
Brilliant. Very interesting information. A lot of information we need to digest here. Thank you for sharing that. There is another question about hair thinner or fallout. Many people are unaware of how sugar intake can affect their health. So can you talk about that?
Sure. So just to be clear, you want me to elaborate on blood sugar and hair health?
Exactly.
So how does elevated blood sugar affect your hair?
Yes.
Okay, good. I just wanted to know where I was going with that. Sure. So as I mentioned before, just overall, blood sugar is a precursor to healthy hormones because of the whole cortisol response, right? So we don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're going to be elevating blood sugar, because there are organisms. So here's the cycle. We have an immune system that is designed to fight invaders and keep everything in check and make us into a vessel where we can attack things as they come and live a normal life. And so when we chronically have elevated blood sugar, that makes our immune system less capable. Once your blood sugar goes, I believe it's over 140 or 130, we begin to have an impact on our vitamin C and our macrophages. Okay, and so the point is that when we have elevated blood sugar very consistently, our immune system starts to be less capable, less apt. And then we have organisms that live in us, like Candida, for instance. And if it's in good ranges, it's okay. But when your immune system isn't as capable, it starts to say, hey guys, Saril's weak, her immune system can't do anything. Let's go take over. And so they start populating, especially because you have just released a bunch of sugar stores into your bloodstream. They get to eat now because they feed off of sugar. And so now you've created a scenario where you can actually create leaky gut, because Candida, it gets to poke holes in your stomach because of the way that it grows. it has these tentacle-like endings where it can create these little holes in your stomach, and then it wants to live. It can live in your digestive tract. It can live in your nails. It can live in your vaginal canal and your anus. It can live in your mouth. It can live on your scalp. And so if it decides it wants to live on your scalp, what I see in clinical practice is people eat a lot of sugar, and then all of a sudden their scalp is itchy, even though they've washed it. And they don't quite understand. They may not even see any dandruff, but they're dealing with this condition. And so their body will say, oh, you know what? Saril has this overgrowth, and she's not doing anything. She's not taking any herbs to get rid of it. It makes her crave sugar because it can affect our mood. It can have an effect on our neurotoxins, on our neuroreceptors, I should say. And so it begins to influence us to want to eat sugar. We eat more sugar. It grows. It populates. It's living on our scalp. And then our body says, let's create some scar tissue to stop the growth. Let's try to do some damage control. We don't want this thing going out of control. And so it's doing it as a mechanism to help me. But in reality, it's making me bald, and I don't like it. But the bigger sacrifice is letting the candida go out of control, because I'm not really doing anything on my end to help. My body's priority is to keep me alive, so it's going to interfere. That is just one example, but there are many different examples of how elevated blood sugar can create scarring. It can create hair thinning, but ideally at the foundational level, it's this idea that excess sugar is making us weaker, making our immune system weaker, and it's also making us more susceptible to overgrowth, just putting us in a condition where it's much harder for us to thrive, because we're now focusing on survival, and we're creating this chronic inflammation in our body to the point where it can even affect, as a woman, our ability to reproduce. Because if we're chronically inflamed, our ovaries will not produce as much progesterone, and that is something else and then we create estrogen dominance, because that is categorized when you have too much estrogen in relationship to progesterone. So you can have low estrogen but still have estrogen dominance, and that is a situation where now you are having a hard time detoxifying for many reasons. And I can go down a whole rabbit hole with that, but just to give your audience the big picture, when you have estrogen dominance, your liver is trying to conjugate estrogen with bile and have you poop it out. But your body creates an enzyme that releases, especially if your gut bacteria isn't the way that it should be, that releases that estrogen you were trying to poop out, and it recirculates in your bloodstream much stronger. And then that in turn makes your bile clumpy, so now it can't conjugate to the estrogen as well. And so you are elevating this inability to detoxify using bile. And so your body will and this is my professional opinion based on what I've seen in clinical practice and what I know. I haven't read this anywhere. This is my own intellectual property, but it's almost as if your body says, okay, she can't detox well. We have to find different ways. And because your hair is made out of organic matter, meaning that when your body creates hair, it will take what is in the body and put that in the hair. So heavy metals, which are toxins, the neurotoxins, they're horrible for our body. And we all have heavy metals. Some of us have had amalgams in our mouths. I was one of them. Some people still have that. If you've eaten rice, you've eaten arsenic. If you've had fish and seafood, you may have had mercury. Lead poisoning. I mean, it is just the cost of being alive in 2024. And if anybody does a hair mineral analysis test, they will find heavy metals in their hair. And so the body takes heavy metals and puts it into your hair. And then it's almost like it says, well, you know what? Saril got some estrogen dominance issues going on at this moment. Let's go ahead and dump some hair out so we can make new hair with hair stem cells, get more of that stuff out of her bloodstream and into the hair, and just kind of dump toxicants out that way. And that's why we see people with estrogen dominance have massive amounts of hair falling out. And so those are two examples, but there are a few of how blood sugar being imbalanced can cause an issue with hair growth.
Brilliant. Very interesting information. Thank you for sharing that. There are a lot of information to learn about blood sugar levels and hair loss or health. So I think people need to watch this more than once to understand how blood sugar levels can impact many things in our body, including our hair. I want to talk or to ask you about misconceptions and myths when we talk about hair loss. And people might have different opinions or myths about hair loss or how to grow hair naturally. This is, I think, more common. When you talk to someone, they will start giving you advice, do this, try this, something like that. So can you give us like 3 or 5 top misconceptions about hair loss? Before you continue watching or listening to this episode, I want to take a moment to invite you to book a call with me. If you are looking for personalized support to manage diabetes effectively and take control of your health, visit onennessimpact.org to schedule your call today. Back to the episode.
Oh wow, there's so many. Right? I would say, okay, 3 or 5. So help me count them out here. I would say the biggest one that is the most prevalent is this notion that hair loss has to do with your genes. If your parents were bald, you're going to be bald. There's nothing you can do about it. And that's just the card that you were dealt. And so my messaging, what I want to be known for and what I'm trying to change the world with is this notion that hair loss and thinning is similar to type 2 diabetes. If it's managed and the symptoms are under control, it's almost as if you've dialed down the expression of that gene, right? And then it's almost like you don't have the condition. For instance, my father, he was on medication that he's no longer on for diabetes. Why? Because he's learned to manage the condition to the point where he is not diabetic. And so it's the same thing with hair loss and thinning. If we're able to live our life in a way where we know what our triggers are, and I'll give myself as an example. I know that if I'm exposed to mold, I'm going to have massive amounts of hair fall out. Dust is another one. A lot of people don't believe that dust can be a huge trigger for hair loss. But if you think about how dust is made by the degranulation of substances, right? Our clothes, our socks end up getting holes in them because over time with wear and tear, things begin to disintegrate, or there are things from outside that come into the home and from the inside out. And so all these particles are flying in the air and they come so quickly. A lot of the times we have synthetic things that we're wearing and that we have in our home. And so these things are toxic to us and we're inhaling them. Some people have central air conditioning. They don't clean the ducts. So there's dust trapped in there and they're just recirculating that air, especially in new homes. They were designed to have less airflow from the outside in and from the inside out. And so it's like we're living in an airplane and we're recirculating all this toxic material, and we're not going to inhale dust and poop out dust. We don't pee out dust. So our body has to do something with it. It has to change the composition of it to make it something that we get to throw back into the world that's organic, so that the world can, do its thing and sustain life. And so we kind of become these recycling bins for all of these toxicants, right? And so it's not genes, it's knowing our triggers. So I know those are 2 big triggers for me, as well as certain foods. If I could live my life in a way where I'm mindful of those things, not exposing myself to it, taking care of myself to a different degree, like if I know I was exposed to mold, which I was the other day, making sure I drink a lot of water, I drink binders, I go into the sauna blanket, I do things to take care of myself, then when I wash my hair, I'm not going to have as much hair falling out. But, I am going to have some, and I know that those are my triggers. So if you can live your life in a way where you're aware of your triggers, and then you're aware of the things that you're doing that make it better. Like I know what supplements to take, what diet to do, what lifestyle changes to make so that my hair can get thicker over time. And then I also know what is the bare minimum I need to do just to maintain my results. And that's what I walk my clients through, building that for themselves so they become highly aware of what those things are for them. So that way hair loss and thinning can be similar to type 2 diabetes, something that they can manage with grace so they can age gracefully. So that's the number one huge misconception, is that it's all genetics. The second huge misconception is that food has absolutely nothing to do with it. And that is absolutely not true, because we are what we eat and what we can digest from what we eat. And we know this. Like somebody who's out there eating McDonald's every day, let me tell you what's happening to them. Every time they eat a meal that is so inflammatory like that, their body is intentionally interpreting that as a stress response. And it is going to thwart blood flow away from their hair, away from their toes and their fingers, and it's going to bring it to their important muscles, to their core, whatever organs they need to run for their life, because they're saying like, what the hell did she just do? Like, what was that? You see? And so it has to respond because it doesn't know what kind of a life-threatening trigger that was, but it knows that it was triggered with all of these chemicals and all of these things that aren't healthy. And now you have diverted blood flow from your scalp for 6 hours. But how many of us don't even wait 6 hours to eat? And every meal that we are eating is filled with toxins. And then we wonder why our hair isn't growing well. And it's because of the state that we are chronically in, which is not a healing state. And so that's number 2. And I would say number 3 is this idea that there is a point of no return when it comes to hair loss and thinning. I would say that there are very few cases in my practice where I don't feel like there is hope for helping them. Most people that come through the doors, if they're intentional with the protocol, with the diet and the lifestyle changes, they do see some shifts and they do get some results. And even if it's scarring alopecia, which is the type that people say, oh no, if there's scarring under the scalp, it's nearly impossible to get it back. That is not what we think in my practice. I specialize in that, actually. Like if someone has, alopecia because they have scarring underneath, then that's the person that I really want in my practice, because I know that I can change their life in a way that they never thought was possible. And so that is the misconception number 3, this idea of, oh my gosh, if it scars over, then it's too late. And there are certain types where we can't get it back. I want to debunk that. I will say though, in all honesty, if somebody is a burn victim, they had a burn on their scalp, like they survived a fire or someone hit them with a iron, I don't know for certainty that they can. However, I don't say that they can't. The body's a miraculous thing. It's possible, who knows? But I won't say to that person, yes, absolutely, I've seen it before, we could do it again. Or if someone has had a surgical incision where someone actually cut them with a scalpel and then the skin healed back, they stitched them up, but it didn't grow back the same way. Maybe there's a keloid or something. If it doesn't look the same, then I'm also unsure that, there's something that I personally feel confident that I can do something about. And lastly, I would say if somebody had an infection on their scalp, meaning that there was pus, there are craters, their skin is inundated, it just looks different, they're like little dips in their skin, then I would also say I'm not sure in that case. But in any other case, I'm just like, bring it on, because I feel like there's a possibility to see some improvements once we're able to clean up that environment where the follicle is housed. And the reason I say that is hair needs very few things to grow. We need a follicle, we need blood that has nutrients and oxygen getting to the follicle, and boom, we got hair. As long as those hair stem cells get into the follicle, they start germinating because of the fact that blood is getting to it and there's nitrogen and oxygen in it, then we've got the recipe for hair growth. The reason why some people start losing that ability to see healthy hair grow, and they have the balding like I did, where it was literally spreading all over my scalp. I'll show you guys one more picture actually, where you could see just how bad the thinning was all over. And you could even see I didn't look healthy. Like there's these dark circles under my eyes, and just my hair was just completely see-through. That was my hair curly. I had lost my ability to curl my hair. It was literally...
There is a difference.
Yeah, there's a huge difference. And that was from all the scar tissue that was built up under my scalp. But that's the third misconception that I want to just destroy.
That's fine. But just for because we are running out of time,
yeah.
There is one thing regularly I hear from people is about hair loss and hormone imbalance. Is that a misconception or is it a fact?
Are you talking about DHT, the famous DHT?
No, because if they see someone is bald, they will see, the first thing they will say about it is maybe he has got a hormone imbalance. Is that true?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. You're referring to this idea that hair loss is always attached to a hormonal imbalance, and you want to know if that is true.
Yes.
And so what I'm saying is hormonal imbalances are common when it comes to hair loss, especially when you're seeing hair physically leave your body, or just in men when they have elevated DHT, you can see the thinning start to spread around their scalp, and so to speak. But there is new information that is suggesting that when there is elevated DHT, there is also a prostaglandin D2 that is coming onto the scene at the same time. And so when this enzyme comes onto the scene, its job is to constrict and contract, to do whatever it has to do to repair it, to repair the environment at whatever cost that is. And so there is new information that suggests there is actually a relationship between that and the receptor that is getting in the way for the growth to take place. And it's not so much the DHT, but it's more so the prostaglandin and the effect that has on that receptor. And so the whole thing that people aren't talking about enough is the fact that DHT is elevated in the first place. Why is it elevated in the first place? And so DHT is testosterone, and it is true testosterone because it cannot be broken down into anything else. When you create hormones in the body through the process of aromatization, we can sometimes take those hormones and break them down into another hormone that the body feels like it needs. But once testosterone has become DHT, there is no more breaking that down into anything else. And so it has been shown that testosterone can actually be an inflammation modulator, meaning that when someone is chronically inflamed, DHT can help the body deal with that inflammation. And so the goal that we should be going after is not how do we lower DHT, because now there's new data suggesting that it's not even the DHT, it's the prostaglandin D2, it's the effect it's having on the receptor. The goal is to understand, well, why is DHT elevated in the first place? Where is the chronic inflammation? Why did the body ask it to do that? Because that is actually a genetic superpower. Like your body says, oh, Gamdan is just way too inflamed, way too often. You know, maybe you have leaky gut, maybe whatever the case is. And it's going to say, you know what, let's go ahead and make that DHT just so he can live a long and healthy life. He'll still get the girls It's okay. We can make him a little bald, you know. And I think with men, it is acceptable. Like some women actually prefer men with bald head. They think it's cute. With women, it is a lot less acceptable, and we have to spend a lot of money on wigs and all these other things. And so there is somebody that could be either fully bald or on their way to being bald, and then they get into their health and then they manage their health, but they still have that scar tissue, which is what I'm saying can be broken down, and we can get some results and we can get some regrowth because those follicles are still there even though we can't see them. According to what I've seen in my clinical practice, it's just a matter of breaking down that scar tissue while we make sure the body doesn't create excess DHT, because we have done enough to help with the underlying issue of elevated inflammation on a chronic basis. And so I feel like that's why sometimes we see this guy might be really buff, going to the gym and all that, and he has like a bald head. But at the same time, it's just like, okay, well, what were the behaviors, whether it was things that he was thinking, things that he was eating, mold in his environment, dust in his environment, things he wasn't aware of, that gave him the space to create that scar tissue, you know, while he's living healthy. And did he ever address that scar tissue? Because once he does, then his hair can grow back. So that's something that I wanted to mention too about the whole DHT thing.
Thank you for sharing that. Very interesting. Thank you. Before I move to the next question, I believe that you have got a free guide or a gift for our audience that maybe you want to share with them.
Yes, I do actually. I have two that I can talk about. So for those people in your audience who are thinking, oh my goodness, I want to believe this, but I can't wrap my head around it because everything I've ever heard was hair loss is irreversible. For those people, I've written a book, and it's called Becoming a Belcanic. Remember I told you guys a Belcanic is someone who's a body mechanic. She's mastering her body mechanics to reveal her inner belle. So to that person, there's a book that I wrote, and you can go to my website at www.belcanics.com/becoming a Belcanic. And then there you can put your email in and download the book. And that'll help you really wrap your head around, my goodness, what I'm eating, what I'm thinking, and where I am actually does influence my health. And the book does a good job of explaining it, as well as giving you some tasks that you can do to figure that out, how that plays out in your life through keen observation and intentional awareness of your symptoms and what you are doing on a day-to-day basis. And then for the listener who says, oh my gosh, there's so much that she's saying that resonates with me, I really want to have a conversation with her about my health and my hair, I would say go ahead to my website and take the quiz. Once you go to the website, you should get a screen that pops up asking you to take it, or you can go to my website and just look at the top menu bar and click on quiz. And at the end of the quiz, there will be an opportunity for you to get on a call with me to go over your symptoms. This is called a 30-minute symptoms decoding session. And so if you want to do that at no cost to you guys, just because it's your audience, Gamdan, they can go ahead and use the discount code CONSULT, which is CONSULT. So you can use that discount code, and then you'll be able to have that symptoms decoding session at no cost to you guys.
Thank you for sharing your free gift with our audience. I have another question before we finish this episode. What inspiring message or advice would you like to leave with our viewers and listeners to motivate or help them on their health journey?
I learned through the ordeal that I went through with my hair loss and thinning that what you fear becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if I would have feared, oh my gosh, I'm going to be bald, I'm going to have to wear wigs for the rest of my life, and just lived in that reality before it happened, that's what would have happened. Because through my fear, I would have been aligning my actions, preparing myself to accept that, not fighting hard enough for something else, and just, living in that, wanting to protect myself from disappointment. However, by choosing to leave, absolutely not. This is not going to be my life. I know something is wrong. I'm going to keep looking for it. And I'll have to tell you, the whole reason why I tried so hard, it was because when I was at my worst, at that picture that I showed you guys, I had just broken up with my ex-boyfriend that I thought I was going to marry. And had been single for 8 months. And I broke up with him because he cheated on me with a girl that was 10 years younger than me. And I said, there is absolutely no way that I'm going to leave this guy and then I'm going to go age like this. That is not going to be my story. And so I was sitting in this personal development experience where the speaker, he's very famous. Some people may know him. His name is Tony Robbins. He was saying that people sometimes they can't get through their result, and he would question them and they would say, I've tried everything. And he was like, really? You've tried everything? And so when I heard that, I said, oh, he's right. There's no way. I've absolutely tried everything. And so just being able to step into that truth and own it, I went to another place where I invested $75,000 in my health that I didn't have at the time. I had to refinance my home. I had to get rid of my moldy car and get a new car. I found different ways to get income. I got really creative, and I got my credit cards to give me balance transfers into my bank account. I did everything I had to do, but I found a way until I got to the point where I had figured out so much. Hair was regrowing, less hair was falling out, but I still had thinning hair from that scar tissue. And I woke up one morning and I desperately put my hands on my head and I started moving it, and I saw my scalp was very stiff. It wasn't as mobile as it is right now as I moved my scalp on this video call. And I knew that meant, oh, I'm not getting the nutrients, I'm not getting the blood, I'm not getting the oxygen. And I looked up into the heavens and I said, God, please help me. I know that I have to break down the scar tissue. Just tell me what to do. And then immediately I started searching all the internet, and I found a strategy. I applied it and it worked. And that was the point where I started getting exponential results for myself and my clients in a way that I never had before. And I really want to give God the glory on that. And so I was really able to not live in this fear because I kept the hope. And my thoughts were, even if no one else can figure this out, I'm going to keep trying until I do. And because I believe that, that's what happened. And so I just want to caution your audience, when you're thinking about type 2 diabetes, when you're thinking about hair loss, don't live in the fear of oh my gosh, I'm going to get an amputation. Oh my gosh, I'm going to go bald. Oh my gosh, insert horrible thing that you're dreading. Live in the truth that, thank you God, because I have tools. I'm alive in a place where there's more information available, more tools, more capabilities. Look at this podcast that you're having for people, just to give them that opportunity to make better choices for themselves. So, live in that truth and take the actions that are aligned with that, because that's going to get you to the outcome. Not to mention, it's going to help you release less stress hormones, which is going to elevate your cortisol, which is going to elevate your blood sugar. So it is very important that you don't live in that fear and you live in the real truth. Find the real truth for you and focus on that and in hope.
Brilliant. Very interesting. So never give up, and we need to try different strategies. And I don't want to say the best, but one way to figure things out is to look for a coach. Sometimes it might take us years to find the solution, but working with a coach is going to save you many years of trying things or eliminating struggles.
Yeah, and
thank you for sharing
you.
your inspiring message.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have come to the end of this episode. I would like to express my sincere gratitude for our amazing guest, Saril, for sharing her expertise and insights with us today. I also want to thank every one of you, our dedicated viewers and listeners, for being a part of this episode. If you found this episode insightful and valuable, I invite you to join our community of people committed to thriving with diabetes. To stay up to date for upcoming episodes, empowering discussions, and practical tips, make sure to subscribe and follow us. Thank you everyone for joining us on this impactful journey. Until next time, take care of your health and keep thriving.